Okay, uh, let's get started soon. Let me making sure everything is up running as expected. Okay, okay. Good, good afternoon, everyone. My name is CJ Guo, and I'm currently the co-founder and CEO of StreamNative, and we are kind of the StreamNative is a San Francisco-based startup that is kind of founded by the developers of Pulsar and BookKeeper, and we provide kind of managed service for Pulsar, and as well as consulting and training related service. And we are also I'm also kind of the PMC member of Pulsar and BookKeeper, and I've been working on this project for a long time. And I'm hosting this TGI Pulsar live stream every Friday, talking about Pulsar and BookKeeper and the whole ecosystem in general. And welcome to TGI Pulsar episode 11, and continuing the whole series of BookKeeper related talks. And I'm going to uh, talk about the auto-recovery mechanism in BookKeeper, and that is um, the mechanism that BookKeeper use for detect any failures on bookies and replicate the data, and to ensure all the entries in Bookie are kind of meet the replication requirement, and making sure data is highly available, and you are able to read at any time, and there's no data loss. So that is the main session I'm going to cover for today's episode. And let's get started. As usual, I'm going to paste this link into the YouTube chat. And if you're interested, you can check out this show note link. And as usual, we just started from a week in review. And so as I mentioned, last week is 252 is under voting. We actually just announced 252 a couple of days ago. It's probably like 2 or 3 days ago, and it's bug fixes released based on 251. It fixed bunch of the kind of the issues, including some of the enhancements in different area, from brokers to schema, and to functions, tier storage. Feel free to check out the release notes, and as well as the blog post that the release manager written to cover some of the major changes that um, were done in 252, and it's also available for download. The website is kind of didn't switch to 252 yet. I think we're still waiting for the documentation to be fully indexed, so you can search from the search bar. But if you want to check out the 252 documentation, you can just go to uh, docs. Sorry, uh, click the versions, and then just go to the 252 section and click the documentation. You're able to see all the documentation related to 252, and all the downloads should be already updated, including all the binary uploaders and connectors as well. So this is 252. And similarly, I think 260 is coming. We clean up a bunch of the issues related to 260, and I think Peng Hui, who is the release manager for 260, already updated the issue. including all the major changes of 2.6.0. In There might be some documentation catch up to ensure all the features included in 2.6.0 are already are fully documented, so you don't encounter any documentation issue when you check out 2.6.0. Um, so if you are interested in 2.6.0 and wondering what other features going into 2.6.0, just go to check out this link, and it will cover all the features and also major changes that would be included in 2.6.0. And if you find there's an issue you want, but it's not covered in 2.6.0, you feel free to make a comment there. We would check out if we can make that change as part of 2.6.0. And as usual, I think I just want to give an update on two coming events. On 26th next week, we would have a webinar from Nutanix talking about lessons learned from managing a Pulsar cluster. And they have adopted Pulsar for about 1 year, and they have many different experience. So if you are rolling out Pulsar into your production, you want to learn some best practice of managing Pulsar on production, some of the use cases or common pattern from other people, feel free to check out our webinar. And uh, for the conference, Pulsar Summit is still opening for registration. Feel free to check out the link and sign up. It's happening. It's a 2 day conference. Will happen on June 17th to 18th. So this is kind of the simple week in review, and then I'm going to kind of deep dive into today's session. Is more talking about the bookie AutoRecovery, and I kind of write a simple note. Is about getting a bit on a bit deeper into the concept, and I will walk through a simple way to simulate that to help people understand how the manual recovery and decommission works. And then I would talk about how these can be automated with auto recovery, and what are the concept and how it works. And so in this session, I don't have any kind of materials or slides. I was just using one live clusters and deep dive, use that to do a walkthrough session instead of kind of educational session, to talk just briefly on using slides. And that is I feel like using a walkthrough session, it's much helpful to help people understanding a bit the whole bookie concept, and as well as the recovery concept and how it works. So actually, let me pull my terminal into my screen. Give me 1 second. Uh, okay, let me just use this one. Okay, oh, sorry. Need to make sure I'm able to see that. Okay, so I have a kind of a cluster that was deployed using Helm chart and running in Kubernetes. And so I'm going to actually, let me see how to do that. Okay, so Um, so I have a kind of a cluster up running, and I can just go to uh, actually let me just use K9S. That is much easier. And I can just go to this tool set. Okay, and let me pull. Let me actually start a bunch of other. One second. Wait. Okay. Um, okay. Uh, Actually, let me see. Sorry. Okay. I have cluster running, and I'm going to first maybe produce some of the. I mean, let me run. Let's run a perf tool that is to produce master. Let's say 100 master per second and perf topic. Sorry. And just like get a producer running, and at the same time, uh, I would just use the Pulsar admin uh, Pulsar manager to see some of the okay. To use the Pulsar admin, you can actually see a bunch of the kind of topics that is running, and you're able to see some of the metrics coming in. And I also have Grafana up running here, so we are able to see different type of metrics here. Um, let's see. So we have producer up running and produce to one of the topic that is called per topic. And let's switch to the, let me see. Let's, I'll just switch to the bookie dashboard. So we can use that dashboard to see a bunch of the difference that, like when we make changes. So I just want to pull it up. And, okay. So we have a producer that is up running, and I'm going to do run some admin commands that you can. Let's do a topic list, and I think it's under the default namespace, so you are able to see the default namespace. Okay, so you are able to see we have a per topic here, and usually, in order to understand how Pulsar use BookKeeper, one of the common tool that you can do is you just go to Pulsar admin tool, run topics, stats internal, and then you list the topic, and it would return the stats internal information. Let me just move this up. So you will see this producer up running, but it will give you all the information that you can get from this topic. Is it will tell you this is the list of ledgers, and you have one cursor that is called perf sub because I create this topic before and I didn't delete it. But this would give you some of the information in terms of like the total size, the current ledger size, entry size, and ledger size, and what is the state of this topic, and as well as some of the cursor information, like what is the read position, what is the last partition that was marked as deleted, and you would also able to see individual delete messages as well. And so I want to point out here is you see uh, a parser topic is actually comprised by many different small ledgers. So each ledger, you can think about it's stored in BookKeeper, and in within the topic metadata, you actually keep a list of ledgers, and um, BookKeeper itself would also store the information of individual ledgers. So from this topic stats internal, you're able to get a list of ledgers that used for this topic. And if you want to looking into more detail about individual ledgers, like for the example, this ledger 6 and ledger 11, what you can do is you can find a tool called Bookkeeper, and there's a tool called Shell, and it has bunch of the command lines that you can use for operating the Bookkeeper cluster. You can do a simple thing is you can do list ledgers. It will basically listing out all the ledgers, and since what our interest here is on ledger 6 and ledger 11, and there's a command called ledger metadata. This ledger metadata would basically used for sorry basically would be used for kind of getting the ledger metadata information. Okay, it doesn't support dash edge, but that's fine. I think, wait, I think we support help master. I believe so. Yeah, so you can use shell help command to get the help master for individual command. And in using these tools that you can get the metadata for a given ledger. So let's take a look at the, let's say dash L, and let's take a look at the metadata of ledger 6. So you can see here, it basically sets your sample size to write column size 2, add column size 2, and length is the total bytes that is stored in this ledger, last entry ID. And the most interesting thing here is more about examples. Example is basically kind of the list of bookies that used for storing these ledgers. So as you can see here, it's using the bookie 1 and bookie 0 for storing this ledger. And it also stores some of the customer metadata information for identify what is the value, sorry, what is the component and what is the major ledger that this ledger belongs to. And all this information are kind of base 64 encoded. So if you want to decode this, I think you can just run base 64. I forgot the command. Dash dash help. So you're able to decode this. No. Let me see. Oh, sorry. Mm, I should do this. It's 64 decode. So, interesting. Oh, sorry. My bad. So as you can see here, this is coming from the component. And when you decode this, it says this component is coming from major ledger. Let's see, let's check out this. So it basically say this is Pulsar manager ledger. And if you want to check this, run the same command, you can decode that. You will see it says this is from public default persistent per topic. So basically, you can use the metadata information that in Ledger for doing a reverse lookup to see what is the topic or what is the major ledger this ledger belongs to. And similarly as application, I guess this one is Pulsar. So it just like tell you uh, who is referencing this ledger. Yeah. So this is Pulsar. Okay. So this is the ledger metadata, and I in this I want to show you this is give you some give you some idea. And this is the ledger 6. This is already closed. So there's no more entries will be appended to this ledger. And let's take a look at 11, which is an opening ledger. So it should return a very similar structure to you. Uh, oh, it's already located. Okay, let's see. Uh, so we need to, let's take a look at the stat internal again. I think it already does a ledger over. So it writes 6, 11, and right now it writes 12. So let's take a look at 12. So you will see this ledger is still open, and currently it's using ledger 0 and ledger 1 for storing this for storing the data. And what I'm going to show here is uh, let's use let's check the parts because I did kind of test before, and I already kind of scaled down the number of bookies from 3 to 2. So there's only 2 bookies running here, and let me just scale up so we can see how things change, uh, like from 3 bookies and that then going back to 2 bookies. So let me scale up the step set, this bookie step set to replicas 3. So so this is would be uh, the replicas would back to uh, 3. So let me check the parts. So you're able to see we can bring up again a new bookies, and let's wait until the bookies kind of become ready. And I think it's still starting up, but let's see. Let's wait for a while. Okay, it's already up, and so let me try to trigger. Um, so right now uh, we only have 3 ledgers. That is 6, 11, 12. But we before we only have 2 bookies, so most of the ledgers are kind of allocated in those 2 bookies. And let me do an unload. I want to use unload to kind of trigger creating a new ledger. So this is would be unload basically is uh, asking brokers to close the topic and reload it again. And this would usually trigger create ledger rollover, and it will create a new ledger. So in this example is I basically unload the topic, and then it will close the previous ledger 12 and open a new ledger 13. And let's see. Uh, so let's check the ledger metadata of 13. So as you can see here, it tried to use the bookie 2 and bookie 1 as an ensemble. And so I'm going to do one thing is to simulate that I have three bookie right now. That is 0, 1, 2, and I want to simulate a situation is bookie 2 going down, and we will see how Pulsar react to this bookie failure, or how broker react to this bookie failure. So as you can see here, this is the producer still kind of running, and it's sending the message at 100 message per second. And let's kill this bookie 2. And by killing that, and I'm just using scale as the command to scale down the number of replicas from 3 to 2. That means it would kill bookie 2. So it will making sure bookie 2 is not going back when we do the exercise. So I scale down bookie 2, and let's check the part again. So as you can see here, it's terminating bookie 2, and you should be able we should be able to see it's gone. So bookie 2 is gone. So but during if a bookie 2 is gone, there's no impact to any like your producer traffic. It's because uh, the broker would do an example change, would try to find a new bookie to replacing the old data, sorry, replacing the failure bookie. So if you check this again, let's just check the ledger 13 again. So you can see here, the actually it has a new example was created. So that is the starting writing to bookie 0 and bookie 1 starting from entry 12037, and you have the old entries that is from 0 to 12037 are kind of stored in bookie 2 in bookie 1. So this is what we call example change. It's basically create a new example and making sure all your writes can continue. But it would not impacting any your write traffic, so your producer will keep producing without any impaction. But the question coming back is my bookie 2 is gone, and I'm not sure when it will coming back. So those entries from 0 to 12036 are kind of stored in bookie 2, and that means those entries I only have one replica. So if bookie 1 going down at the same time, I would be facing uh, data loss. And how we are going to handle this situation, that is what we call bookie recovery. So I want to making sure all the data stored in BookKeeper are meeting the same replication settings. So making sure the replicas is still going back to 2, no matter so ensure you don't facing any potential of data loss. So how to do that? So basically, BookKeeper provide a tool called a manual tool. What we call it's called recover. So let's do help. Oh, recovery. Yeah, recover. So it's designed for recover the ledger data for failed bookies. So in this sense, is because my ledger, my bookie 2 is already gone, and I want to making sure all the data that is stored in bookie2 are replicate to all the other available bookies in the cluster. So I can manually run this tool to do the recovery. So uh, it expect that you kind of give bookie ID as the source. So that means if my because the failed bookie is bookie2, so what I need to supply here is the bookie2 bookie ID. And so the command, so basically the command will say I want to recovery all the data that is stored in these failed bookies and making sure all these data are replicated to other available bookies. So what it does, it basically let's see what how it works, and I can run these tools. So it will basically you are promoted to asking if you want to recover all the ledgers for this bookie, and let's type yes. So what it does is basically it will figure out what are the ledgers were used to stored in this bookie 2, and it will read the entries from the other replicas and find an available bookies to replace the failed bookies. So once it finished that, you will see uh, kind of the ledger metadata being updated for this ledger. So let's go back to check the ledger metadata 13 again. So you will see here is the example has been updated from bookie 2, bookie 1 to bookie 0 and bookie 1. That means all the entries that used to store in bookie 2 has been replicated to bookie 0. So it makes sure that all the entries in this whole bookie cluster are meeting the same requirements, which is the right column size, making sure I have the enough copies of the data to torrent any future bookie failures. So this is what bookie recovery does. And auto recovery means I make this process become an like running in background in an automatic way, so you don't need to manually run this bookie shell recovery tool to replicate data from for any failure bookies. So that is kind of the idea of auto recovery. But what it basically does is making sure any data stored in the failed bookies that is able to be replicated to all the other available bookies in the clusters. So this is kind of from tooling perspective to give you an idea what bookie recovery does. And let's take a look at from uh, a diagram perspective how you can understand the process. So as the example showed before, uh, in BookKeeper you actually have in BookKeeper you actually have a cluster of process that is called auto recovery daemon, and the daemon is running along with bookies. And the daemon would do a leader election to figure out one leader, and the leader would be acting as an auditor, and the other daemon would become a worker, and the auditor would kind of monitoring the healthy of the cluster to see if there's any bookie gone, if there's a ledger is kind of broken, and it would then scheduling a recovery task to recover data for the failed bookies. So to kind of visualize the process I did before, Let's assume there's a ledger X, and the ledger X is actually store the data in three bookies. That's called 1, 2, 3. And bookie 3 is gone. Then the auditor would detect that bookie 3 is gone. Let's say I need to figure out who is this guy. Okay, let's say bookie 3 is gone, and the auditor will realize that, okay, so that for a given ledger, that this this ledger, the number of replicas is reduced from three is reduced from 3 to 2. It doesn't meet requirement of that I need 3 replicas. And so what it does is the auditor will schedule a task to recover the ledger X, and the recovery is done by the recovery worker. So it will receive a task, say I want to recover X, and recovery X, what it basically does is it would try to read the data, individual entries from existing copies. So since I have three copies, so bookie 3 is gone, but I still have the data stored in either bookie 1 or bookie 2. And the recovery process is basically reading the entries from any of the available bookies and replicate to a new bookie. So in this example, let's say we have a new bookie. It's called bookie 4. And when the recovery worker start working, and it will try to read the entry 0 from bookie 1 and write entry 0 to bookie 4. So basically what it does is the recovery worker, this guy, reading the entry 0 from bookie 1 and write the entry to bookie 4. So bookie 4 would have entry 0, and then it will keep reading. And this time it can read the entry 1 from the bookie 2 and write to bookie 4. And then reading the entry from entry 2 from bookie 1 and replicate to bookie 4. And let's keep doing replicate entry 3 and replicate entry 4. So as you can see here, the recovery process is it's actually reading from any existing available replicas and replicate data to a new bookies. So it's a you can think about it's a many to many recovery process. So it doesn't kind of limited by one single replicas. It actually can read from any alive replicas and to recover the entries to a new bookie. So once it finish it is I finish replicating all the data, then I would update the metadata to change the example from it used to be 1, 2, 3, and then I will change the example to 1, 2, 4. So once it's updated to 1, 2, 4, that means it has all in the metadata. It means all the entries is stored in 1, 2, 4. So for any future operations that read operations, you can read the entries from any of the available bookies. Like you can read from 1, from 2, or from 4. There's no limitation. So that is kind of the simple idea, a simple diagram to reflect what does recovery exactly do. And in the whole process is if you have in this on this bookie 3, let's say you have 3 ledgers like XYZ. And when book is gone, the auditor would detect I need to replicate recover both XYZ, and it will schedule and dispatch the recovery task to all available recovery worker, and each one will get ledger to recover. So all the recovery is actually done in parallel. So there's no, it's not kind of limited by a single recovery process. It's not limited by a single bookies. So similarly, if this worker start working on recovery ledger X, it would read from any uh, live replicas of ledger let's store ledger X, ledger Y, and then replicate to any available bookies. So maybe for ledger Y, I have another bookie, let's say bookie 5, and then for replicating ledger Y, it would all going to bookie 5. So in this way, it's a kind of many to many. So uh, this auto recovery can read from many, any of the bookies to do the recovery, and ledger Y can also read from any bookies to do the recovery and write the entry to any bookies. So that is what we call many-to-many recovery, and there's no bottleneck in the whole recovery process. And that is kind of uh, the advantages of bookkeeper replication. There's no single bottleneck. And for sure, since you are doing many-to-many recovery, sometimes you want to control the how fast you can do the recovery. Then you can set setting in the broker side. Let me just show a setting. You can find a setting in the actually on the bookie side. It's called replication entry batch size. That is how many entries you want to read and replicate in parallel. So by increasing it, you would making sure the recovery process go much faster, but it would consume more bandwidth. You can reduce that to a small batch, then you will control the number of bandwidths you used for replicating the data. So this is kind of the kind of a simple process to kind of visualize this recovery. And one of the common questions that would actually coming up when you're operating a bookkeeper cluster is sometimes I just want to I want to decommission a single bookie, and how I'm going to do that. You can do that using recovery process is you can issue, so you can turn this bookie to read only and run a command to replicate the data and to do the decommission. Uh, Let me expand that a bit. Let's see. Sure. Let's say, okay, actually, I need to get my bookie back to replica 3. So then we have enough copies. Let's say, so you can see the bookies coming back again. Okay, let's wait. And I'm going to show. So actually you can see by default I already running a recovery process, right? And that this time I'm going to do kind of using auto recovery uh, instead of manual recovery, so you can see how things are kind of work in auto recovery. So actually, let me double check. Okay, it's back to normal, and I need to enable one thing because I disabled the auto recovery a while ago. Oh no, not this one. So in shell, there's command called auto recovery. I need to explain a bit. Is the in BookKeeper, there's a tool, there's a command called auto recovery. This is for starting the auto recovery daemon, and that's what we used for running the auto recovery process. And in shell, you also have a command called auto recovery, but this is more on interacting with the whole auto recovery process. And what it basically provide is enable and disable auto recovery status. Let's see. Uh, so you can just run shell auto recovery to check if auto recovery is enabled or disabled. I disable that is I try to run a manual recovery for kind of demonstrate how the bookie recovery work. In some of the in sometime auto recovery tool can be helpful is especially when you want to rolling upgrade a bookkeeper cluster. We typically recommend you disable auto recovery because loading upgrade a bookkeeper cluster or loading restart a bookkeeper cluster usually just mean the bookie will be gone temporarily, and you don't want the recovery process kick in to replicate the data during this period. So we recommend that you just disable the recovery. You can do it just by run a shell command. So this is kind of, oh no, there's no disabled. So this would, oh no, I think oh, it's a pause dash D. Okay, that's fine. And since I already disabled it, I just want to, let's enable it. So you will see, okay, this is, we can query it again. You will see auto recovery is enabled. Okay, once the auto recovery is enabled, then if you want to decommission a cluster, then you can just do you can just use the tool to run decommission. There's a command here, decommission bookie. Sorry. Decommission. Actually, I think I need to. I think it takes local bookie as an input, and let's just take a look at the help message. What? Oh my, interesting. I'm not sure. Oh, okay. My shell has some problem. Uh, oh man, this is decommission. Oh man, I'm sorry. So this will give you the information is that is would let's take a look at the description. It first trigger the audit task in making sure all the ledgers stored in the decommission bookies are replicated and the cookies of the decommission bookies delete from metadata server. So this is the kind of recommended way if you want to decommission a cluster. Oh, sorry, a bookie, a single bookie, not cluster. And so since let me just simulate the process. So I need to figure out what is the ledger we are using, and I want to make sure that I cover this. So this we are using ledger 15. So we can check out the late metadata. So 15, we should be able to see if it's using yeah, it's using 0 and 1. So I need to do an unload of the topic to trigger a new uh, ledger to being created. So then we run the topic stats again. Then you should be able to see, okay, we have it throw into a new ledger called 16. And if you check the ledger metadata of 16, you should be able to see, still using one. That's not what we want. So we want to making sure that it's using ledger 2. So I need to run this again. So check ledger 17. So it's using bookie 2 and bookie 1, and that's let's give some time so it has some of the data can be running here, and let's see. Um, let's also simulate like bookie 2 is gone. I want to like decommission it, and I just take off the bookie. So bookie 2 is gone, and so it's terminating. Similarly, if I query 17th, that is the yeah. So it handle the failure and do the switch. And so right now, since the bookie is gone, and I want to decommission this bookie, so I can just do run bookie shell decommission. Uh, I forgot the command again. Decommission bookies dash bookie ID, and I want to decommission this bookie. So remember that earlier in this in the walkthrough, I used manual operations. The command. So when I run the tool itself to do the replication. So it has to talk to one bookie and replicate data to the other bookie. And for decommission here, it doesn't directly replicate data. It basically trigger an audit task in AutoRecovery and tell AutoRecovery that I want to decommission this bookie. Please schedule a recovery task for the recovery worker to replicate the ledgers of this bookie and making sure the right column size or the right column requirement is met. So let's run the command, and we'll wait a while this decommission process is going, because it would trigger the auto recovery. And let's see, I would just go to another part to check the process. Actually, it's already finished. Not yet. So it's already complete. So basically, it was waiting there and to see uh, to wait until the auditor to complete sorry, auditing the bookies and making sure the data has been replicated, and then there's no dangers that having data in that decommissioned bookies, and then it would finish. So we can go back to check the ledger metadata again. You will see a similar behavior as we run the recovery. So you can see here the bookie 2 is already replaced by bookie 0. And so that is kind of the way how the whole decommission works. With that being said, is uh, Bookie already provide a very the recovery mechanism that you can run manually or run automatically through auto recovery process. Why we kind of do in this way is when we're providing a mechanism for do this in manually or automatically is you can actually hook these tools together with your hardware management system or the machine management system. When you want to decommission a hardware, you can trigger this tool to uh, run a manual recovery process or an auditor driven automatically recovery task to making sure all the data of a given machine already replicate into other machine before actually taking this machine out of your current cluster. And that has been uh, very helpful is you can integrating you can automate the whole like your machine provisioning system to automate the whole process for either for your on-premise environment. And if you're running on Kubernetes, you can actually writing a Kubernetes operator that fully leveraging the recovery and decommission command to automate the whole process using uh, uh, an operator. And that was actually one of the tasks that we kind of one of the way that we implementing our own bookkeeper operator. So that is kind of the whole content I want to show about bookie recovery, and hope that give you an idea how exactly the auto bookie recovery work and how you can do this in a manual method in a manual way, or you can just dedicate the whole process to the auto recovery to managing your cluster, and you don't need to worry about if a bookie gone. Do I need to like manually take care of any step? The answer is no. You can just let auto recovery managing all the bookies for you, and you can just lay back and uh, not worry about that. And that is kind of one of the benefits of this multi-layer architecture is you making sure that the storage layer managing all the bookies in the background for managing all the storage in the background for you, and you don't need to worry about the how your broker react to those failures, and how do how do your producer and consumer like react to those failures. So as you can you remember at the beginning of this session, I start the producer. It's kind of the producer is keep running across the whole sessions, no matter how I scale down and scale up, recovery, run the manual recovery or auto recovery. The whole process is still running with no impactions, and that is the advantage of Pulsar, and that is the advantage of multi-layer architecture. So hopefully, at this episode, time flies, and hope and kind of we're running out of time today, but hopefully I give you enough information around bookie recovery, and you can also try out all your commands and yourself, and making sure uh, you can practice or know how to operating bookkeeper in production. And that would be all for today's episode. If you like our kind of episodes about Pulsar and bookkeeper, and you enjoy my show, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us at Twitter. And we regularly post any technical articles, blog posts, and webinars around Pulsar and Bookkeeper. And thank you, everyone. Hope everyone enjoy your rest of the day and rest of the week. And see you in next episode. And bye bye.